Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Dark Frequencies. What is going on? Today, we've got a very interesting topic. We are going to be talking all about Neuralink, and of course, we're also going to be talking about brain-computer interfaces in general. And it's going to be an exciting discussion. I got to tell you guys, in preparation for this episode, I wasn't really tripping that hard on this whole brain-computer interface thing. Like, I've heard about it. I've heard people talk about it over the last couple of years. I remember there being some silly toys way back. I remember there was a toy at Toys R Us that you could buy that was like white and blue, and it cost maybe like $100. You put this thing on your head, and there was like a little ball that was hovering, and you can make it do different things. I forget what it was all about, but you know, I've heard about this brain-computer interface stuff, but I've never really thought it was that big of a deal. However, in preparation for this episode, my mind has been blown quite literally, folks. And that's what it's all about. It's about blowing your mind out. It's about basically we're just trying to completely change human beings from the outside in. It is pretty freaking crazy, and we're going to get into it. But the good news, folks, is it's not only going to be me yapping my mouth about this subject. We also, of course, have Roots, courtesy of Virtual Strangers. Roots checking in live from Colorado. What is the latest, bro?
Not much. Well, computer's running, so that's good. I actually was able to do this live stream. Other than that, not much. I'm intrigued like you on this topic. Didn't know much about it. It's exciting, but it's a little creepy too. I mean, I get creeped out by this stuff easily, but there is some weird things that could happen with this technology, but hopefully it all pans out for the positive. So
yeah, the creep factor is off the chain link fence with this, ladies and gentlemen, as we get deeper and deeper into this subject. And that's really what we're going to do on today's show is like, what are the deeper questions surrounding this? We could cover all the facts that everybody already knows about Neuralink and BCI and Valve and all of that, but almost it's more important to talk about the bigger questions of where this is leading humanity. And of course, we also have Skiva in the building. Skiva, how's it going, man? Looking forward to this, I got to imagine. And yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. I'm good. I'm going to be moving here soon, so the Between Reality studio is a little chaotic, but I'm good. Other than that, I'm looking forward to this episode because I don't know that people truly have a grasp on how this is going to change everyone's lives. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, they don't have a grasp because I didn't have a grasp. So how could anybody else? No, but yeah, no, seriously though, it's like I had no idea that this was that close and that it was going to be that impactful. So why don't we go ahead and back up and let's talk about what we're talking about here. We're talking about brain-computer interfaces. We're also going to talk specifically about Neuralink. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to throw up on the trailer window here a Neuralink specs montage, and I'm going to try to quickly go through some of this stuff. Okay, so the current medical research, we have this thing called the Utah array, which is only 100 channels per array, giant boxes coming out of the back of your head, and we have some demo footage of that. We've also got deep brain stimulation, 8 to 16 channels where they do go deep into your brain, but Elon Musk was saying this is the equivalent of like kicking your television and hoping it comes in clear. Okay, so this is the Neuralink architecture. Last summer, they had this thing that would go behind your ear, and then it would connect to a number of sensors. Now they have a coin-sized piece that is lodged in an opening in your skull. There it is. That is what the actual link looks like. And your skull has about a 10 millimeter thickness, and I believe this is like 8 millimeters. And so it's going to go right there into your skull. It'll fit nice and snug. Hopefully your brain tissue doesn't reject it and all of that. So the Link version 0.9, I hope you got your pre-order in already, 1,024 channels per Link. You can see 23 millimeters by 8 millimeters, so 8 millimeters in thickness. It's flush with your skull. And then guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Every night when you go to bed, put on your skull cap so you can get a fresh charge as you're sleeping. Okay, how do you get a link? Well, you go to the hospital, of course. Everybody gets their link at the hospital, right? It's less than 1 hour to get your link. It can be done without general anesthesia. It is easy as pie. So what do, folks? They cut a hole in your dome piece. They drill into your actual skull membrane, and then they pop the Neuralink puppy in there. That's the surgical robot that they currently are using on the 3 little piggies, and we'll definitely be talking about the 3 little piggies as we move along. And they cut a hole into your dome piece. They drop the Neuralink in there. They get the little fibers, which are like going to be sub-micron at a certain point. I believe they're about 3 microns in thickness right about now. But they believe they can get it down to a single micron and then also eventually actually sub-micron, which then goes into your actual brain tissue. So here it is. This is actual footage of them going into the little piggies. And poor little piggies, they're so cute. How could we do this to these sweet little pigs? They didn't do anything at all, and we're manipulating their brains, ladies and gentlemen. We can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later as well. But yeah, so that's what they're doing. They're throwing it into the pig's brain, and these little super tiny things. So the idea is with these little sensors that are going to go in, the idea is to have them as thin as possible, because the thinner they are, the less damage will actually happen to your brain, the less bleeding you'll have in your brain when that happens. But the downside is if you go too ridiculously thin, then the actual brain tissue itself, the brain tissue basically starts looking at this as like there's an invasion going on. There's some foreign object, right? And so it kind of wants to F with it and fight it off like an infection. So you got to be careful about having it too ridiculously thin. So that's the technology we're talking about here. And in general, when we're talking about brain-computer interfaces, we're basically talking about 2 different modes of brain-computer interfaces. There's basically the extracranial, I believe is what they call it, where it's outside with no surgery required. So you can wear something that's on your head. You could have some kind of special skull cap, a tight-fitting skull cap that could affect your head in different ways. And then there's actually the invasive procedure, actually going into your head. And different companies have different theories about this. For example, Facebook, the great Facebook, ladies and gentlemen, we know them well, right? Facebook is actually working on this as well, but some Facebook people that have commented on this, they believe drilling into your skull is not gonna, like they don't believe that's ever gonna go mass market. They just don't believe people are ever gonna be cool with that. And so they're more with an external idea. And Neuralink has basically said, F all that noise. We are going right into your skull so that you can get accurate signals, accurate read and write capabilities, and you can have a finer level of detail. And one of the ways that this has been described in terms of whether you're going to be inside the skull or outside the skull, imagine it like this. Have you ever gone to a major sporting event or a concert or something like that, and it was basically like a first come, first serve type situation, and unfortunately you got there a little bit too late, the lines were incredibly long, completely sold out, and you're standing on the outside of the stadium, and you can hear noise, you can hear cheering, you can hear, a touchdown just got scored or something like that, but you really have no idea what's really going on inside that stadium. So that's kind of how it is when you're external, outside of the cranium, outside of the skull, is you can kind of infer the things that are going on in there and the signals and stuff. But if you're inside the stadium, obviously you're going to have a much better idea about that. So Skivo, why don't I go over to you first? So what we've been talking about here is mostly kind of this Neuralink, this recent breakdown on Neuralink that we got, this recent unveiling. And what are some of your thoughts on in terms of external, going inside the skull, outside the skull? What do you think about all of that?
Well, I think for what Neuralink is trying to accomplish, I think they have to go in the skull, right? So there's the external wireless stuff, which just reads. It's able to, your brain gives off signals in waves. It works in frequencies, in dark frequencies. But you, but you need to be able to go into the brain if you want to stimulate the brain and write to it. So you couldn't at this point do it wirelessly. I'm sure there will be a time where that will be a thing, and that will be way better than getting something drilled into your skull. But I think this is absolutely huge, and I think it's really big for obviously for people that have issues with their brain. You know what I mean? It's maybe me or you wouldn't want to do it. I mean, I do. I know Roots does not, right? But as of right now, this isn't for us. This is to help people that have severe conditions that have no other way to be healed. So it's just huge. In a medical, medically it's huge. Futuristically it's huge. Gaming it's huge. Everything. It's just a big deal. So,
yeah. Well, why don't we talk like in the beginning days of this technology? See, the thing is, this is going to be done on human beings, right? And so if you're going we can't just start experimenting on human beings without having some valid reason to do so. And so it's going to start off as more of a medical device. And it's going to start off with this idea where you're going to help people that have already suffered incredibly debilitating injuries. They were in some kind of terrible accident, or maybe they were born with some certain problems, neurological problems, brain-related problems, their spinal cord got severed, these sorts of things. So it's going to start out in that field. So for like the next 5 years or so, when it comes to brain-computer interfaces, well, actually, wait a minute. Let me back up and say that there's two different aspects of brain-computer interfaces. We already talked about inside the skull and outside the skull, but there's also the situation of reading and writing to the brain. Okay, so you can read the brain and you can write to the brain. Now, if all you want to do is read the brain, then that can be done, I believe, 100% safe. I don't believe there's any side effects or anything to just reading the brain's signals. So you're not actually doing anything. You're not going to be able to manipulate people's arms and make them move or anything like that. All you're doing is reading the brain. Now, the theory, that one of the questions that would pop up is, well, why is it so great to read the brain? And well, one of the ways it would be great to read the brain is think about people that have had strokes or people that have had problems with their speech center where they no longer have the ability to speak, but they are able to think the thoughts in their head, what they want to say, they just can't convey it to anybody else. And for this purpose, it will be revolutionary for the people that are in this type of scenario, because they could have a relatively simple device that could be connected to their head that could allow them to think things and then instantly have it appear on their phone, and they can show somebody else, or they might even have like a little auditorial thing that they could wear around their neck where it would give computerized type speech for what they're trying to do here. So Roots, I'm going to go to you first on this, just in the idea of reading, not writing to the brain. Writing to the brain, ultimately, way the F more interesting, way the F more scary and terrifying, and all the things that are going to come along with that. But in just reading the brain, is there any other things you can think about that would be incredible in this regard? Or just the idea of like being able to have your thoughts instantly appear on a screen, typed out, even for people that don't have debilitating conditions. This is the ultimate, what do you call it? Those devices that would hear your voice and try to transcribe it. This will be like 1,000,000 times better than that, right?
Yeah, it'd be good in a lot of ways, but I think you kind of need to be able to write. You have to be able to read the brain, right? To be able to, like, as I was watching the video, Skiba, you put up in the Discord, and to be able to pinpoint exactly where they want to hit, they have to understand the brain right now, and they don't understand it fully as far as what they've been able to read. So I think if if they can really, really read it completely, they definitely could write to it a lot better. But yeah, and then in specific cases, like not even just paraplegic or that type of stuff, but autistic people. There's people that are in there, but they know, and they can even write sometimes, or they can type, and they can totally speak. Can you imagine having a conversation for the first time with your autistic kid that you've never had a conversation with, just because they're able to put something on their head and then have that conversation? I mean, I think even just the reading could be phenomenal for in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. A lot of us are hardcore video game players, right? And I mean, that's how we kind of got to know each other, as we all were involved in this virtual reality gaming field. We all have our own YouTube channels related to virtual reality gaming. And so we're all gamers, and that's how we all kind of met each other. And this technology is definitely going to be going into the realm of video games, and it's going to go into the realm of video games a lot earlier than a lot of this other fantastical stuff that we're thinking about that's a little bit more off into the future. And one of the ways that they're going to be able to integrate it into the video game world, and it's exceptionally interesting in this regard when it comes to virtual reality, because with virtual reality you are wearing a headset that is it has a halo band that wraps around your head, which is actually very convenient for companies that want to read brain signals and adapt gameplay in real time. So we've talked about, there's been these ideas where there could be heart rate monitors that would then send signals to the game engine to let it know when your heart rate is dramatically increased. So it could, within the game in real time, it can affect the game and change the game based on what it's sensing. Skiva, going over to you, what do you think about just forget the writing capabilities of this technology? We're just thinking about the reading capabilities, and think, what could it possibly do for gameplay and for making gameplay experiences that much better?
So, kind of like you touched on, having some dynamic experiences where like, oh, I'm kind of bored. This is, oh my God, big explosion. How did it know I needed some stimuli right now? That type of thing. But I think the biggest thing at this point in this technology is being able to read the brain and see what's happening at the same time, and really starting to understand the brain, because the brain is the part of the body that we know the least about, which is kind of ironic, right? So this is going to be a huge tool in learning when the brain does this, it's doing this. Do you know what I mean? And this part of the brain is doing this. We're going to get some of the most amazing understanding, finally, of the human brain just from the read capabilities of this. The things that you can do with just the read portion of this technology, besides dynamically changing games and stuff, would be, being able to think about the text you want to type. And how many times have you been on your like PlayStation or whatever, you're on Xbox, and you go to sign in and you got to type in those stupid keyboards, you know what I mean? And it takes forever to sign in. Imagine just being able to think, boof, there's my email address, boof, there's my password. I know I didn't get my password wrong. I thought it, So there's going to be a lot of conveniences to just the read part alone. Yeah, I'm stoked for it. But the learning thing, that's the biggest piece, because we can't change how the brain works until we learn how to understand it and learn what's firing where and what that accomplishes and what parts of the brain really, worked, what parts of the body and what senses. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so the trailer that I have on the screen right now, this is actually some footage that was provided by DARPA. And what's interesting here is, so they have this mechanical arm that is connected to a guy that has like some neurological problems, is unable to move his arm. And at one point what they do, so that's the hand, this mechanical hand, and they can touch individual fingers. Now that's the Utah array, which is these two large boxes. This is the thing that Elon Musk was talking about. There they are, putting it in the actual brain, and talk about yucky. I mean, it's always like, oh, weird when they show inside someone's brain, right? Okay, so now these are the Utah arrays, these two big boxes that they're putting on this guy's head like a Frankensteinian monster almost. But now what the guy's doing is he's touching these individual digits, like the middle finger, the index finger, the pinky finger of a robot arm, where this guy is blindfolded, and he's asking him, you know, which fingers am I touching? And the guy's saying index finger, middle finger, pinky finger. Those are the Utah arrays that Elon Musk was talking about, which is kind of this like early days brain computer interface. It's a little bit prehistoric, you might say, compared to the more modern methods that we're going to have eventually. But yeah, you bring up a great point, Skiva, because in terms of just being able to read the brain's functions, you can question people about certain things and then be able to see where the brain is firing. And more and more of that information, obviously, you're going to learn more and more about the human brain. We could possibly find out things about consciousness itself. The human brain is probably the most complex thing that you could imagine in the universe that we know of. Right now, at this point in time, there really isn't anything more complex than the human brain. And our level of understanding about the human brain is going to advance by light years as we start experimenting with this kind of technology. And so it's going to be hyper interesting.
And consciousness too, right? Like consciousness is by far the biggest mystery of I think anything on this planet, right? Where does it come from? Is it made up of, does our body create it, or does it come from somewhere else? So I feel like we're really going to get some good answers on how maybe some of this stuff works, or maybe it'll become even more wild to think about if we still can't figure it out. But I mean, I think it's gonna give us so many answers to so many problems we've never had any way to figure out before. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking about too, in terms of just thinking of reading, there's probably going to be hundreds of things that you could list where if we never even wrote to the brain, never sent any signals to the brain, but just reading the signals that are there, we can understand depression, anxiety, all these sorts of things. And then also, as AI starts getting better and better, when we eventually have narrow AI that has been designed to be like an assistant, like a personal assistant, basically like a friend for people that are lonely, people that don't have anybody in their lives. There's older people that are living and they don't have any family members anywhere near them. We all know an older person that goes to the corner store 27 times in the same day, not because they need another candy bar or something. It's because they just want to have human interaction, because they don't have any human interaction in their house, and they feel very lonely and everything. And eventually we're going to have these AI assistants, very similar to that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where it will be able to communicate with you. But imagine how much more effective an AI like that is going to be if it has the information of what kind of emotions you're feeling, the anxiety you're feeling, the pressure or the elation, the joy. It'll be able to understand that so much better just by reading the signals in your brain. Of course, if we just talk about reading signals in your brain, Roots, we can also consider the possibility of this being used in nefarious sorts of ways. Some people are talking about wirelessly being able to read signals in your brain. Could we ever think of a possibility where the military or the CIA or the NSA could possibly have equipment where they might be able to be 50 feet away from you, but they can isolate in on your brain and actually read signals from your brain 50 feet away and know things about you? I mean, it sounds like science fiction. It sounds very unreasonable at this point in time, but I think throwing anything off the table is probably a bad idea. But what do you think, Roots, in terms of a security problem, or companies having too much information, being able, just for the reading aspect of knowing what's going on in your brain at different times.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? If they put a chip in your brain, or they've got something in there that can interface with the computer, they can do everything they can do on a computer. They can do through to get to your brain. They could read your information wirelessly, whatever. I mean, if it's not out there now, it will be. And think about the AI you're talking about. If it can read your emotions in real time, how better to manipulate somebody if you like are ahead of them, if you know all their inputs and you know what's going through their mind and how they tick, and just from a marketing standpoint and what they could how they could market to us that way as well. But yeah, it definitely, I would say it's gonna happen. You know, it's not an if, it's a matter of when. I mean, we're seeing it in every aspect of everything we do. Everything's spied on. There's back doors, and that's my thing too. Is like, I don't care who it is that's doing this. You know, there's gonna be back doors in it, right? There's back doors in everything. So, like, how do you know you're not got this chip and you're loving everything that's going on? Whether, and then all of a sudden you just stop and you're froze, you know, and then you start doing stuff.
Someone reboot Roots.
Yeah, exactly. I just take that risk. It's just weird. It's a weird thing, but even just them knowing our information, people think that's benign, but man, they can do a lot of stuff with information.
Kind of takes privacy and throws it right out the window, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's kind of the debate we've been having with Facebook over all of this, you know, new news about them requiring Facebook logins to use an Oculus Quest or whatever Oculus hardware, and people are concerned that they're going to be recording their movements, recording their speech, recording what they do and their likeness and their personalities. Well, this is going to be a million times worse, you know, especially if you look at it from the standpoint that the military is going to get their hands on this, right? And they are going to use this to try to extract information from, you know, from people maybe in different countries. From, you know, imagine this in war. Imagine if you could somehow make the enemy think that, you know, that everyone around them was, you know, a secret agent and out to get them, and then they kill each other. There's just so many wacky things that, you know, the world's militaries could do with this information. Not just the U.S. military, you know, the Chinese military, the North Koreans. Imagine what North Korea can do. You know, this is something where they, you know, countries that take their people and they cut them off from the real world and they fill them with fear and propaganda and they control them. Well, imagine now they're just going to be able to implant thoughts and love for their country into their brain, and just, it's going to be crazy. One day you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, I need a Coke. I don't know why. I just do. You know, like, you know, advertising and things, there's going to have to be a lot of regulation. There's going to have to be a lot of trust put into how we are going to tackle some of the problems that are going to come up with this, you know, just from an advertising standpoint alone. You know, I mean, I can't imagine that we're not going to be able to make, you know, almost like, you know, what was that movie Inception, where they plant little thoughts into people's heads and they make them feel like it was really their idea. I think that has a huge, I mean, that'll be happening.
Yeah.
You know, if you can implant little ideas into people's heads.
Absolutely. I mean, you can definitely think of that. And like, we think of a situation that happened recently with the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, right? She complained about her cell phone was hacked by the CIA and they're like spying on her. And think about the next level of spying, because like spying right now, you like bug offices, you put a little microphone into someone's car and you hear all their conversations, but that's their conversations.
Or you turn on their phone. Mm-hmm.
Imagine being able, because think about it, if you could get into somebody's car, like you would think, well, how are they going to spy on somebody? They got to put this special cap on someone, because what if the person doesn't opt for having surgery and for having an actual chip inside their head? So they're using this cap, and if you're using a cap, you know, you use it when you want to use it. When you don't want to use it, you take it off, and no one can scan you when it's not on you. But imagine if they could get into your car and they could put something in the roof of your car right above where your brain would be, that amplifies
Man.
and grabs those signals, you know. So there's a lot of
The
interesting things.
tinfoil hat resolution is about to explode.
Exactly. And Skiva, wait a minute. You brought up a perfect point here about the tinfoil hat. So you guys know David Icke. Is it Icke or Ike? David Icke.
David
Okay.
Icke.
So David Icke, this is the guy that back in the 90s talked about lizard people underground running the world. George Bush is a lizard person. That's the guy, right? Well, he's backed off a little bit off of, you know, some of that crazy stuff, but he's back in a major way talking about coronavirus and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that, but I do have a clip of David Icke where David Icke, which one is it? I'm sorry.
Icke.
David Icke. I have a clip of David Icke where he's actually talking about this very specific thing. He's talking about brain-computer interfaces and artificial intelligence. And I'm going to go ahead and run this clip.
Yeah. He definitely believes this is the end goal. Like, this is where they want to get us, right? Where they can have a direct line to our brain and be able to control us. So yeah, this will be an interesting clip.
So let me go ahead and run this clip. It runs for about 1 minute, and we can discuss it on the back side here.
By around the year 2030, humanity will have their brains connected to artificial intelligence. And he's very open about it. As this goes on, artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it now is basically negligible. In other words, you'll be a computer terminal on someone else's internet. And the reason they're being so open about it is the sales pitch, which is you'll be superhuman if you do this. And what you'll be is subhuman, and human consciousness, human thought, human emotion as we've known it will be over. Because every thought, every emotional response will come from AI. He who controls AI will then control every human's perceptions directly who is connected to AI.
Okay, yeah, so that was David Icke talking about basically the dangers, the potential dangers of merging AI with brain-computer interfaces and basically having thoughts from AI automatically coming into your head. And one of the issues that he kind of brings up here is this idea of who are you then? Who are you at this point when you have AI thoughts that are coming into your head? And if corporations can control AI, then can't they basically control what's kind of going on in your head? And so he's kind of bringing up this horror scenario. But one comment I have when I hear something like that is, I don't know, that there's a part of me that just doesn't believe that the world governments care that effing much about individual Joe Schmoes that are walking around. There's too many people. Okay, so Skiva, you disagree? You believe they do care? Okay, here, go ahead. Okay.
There's 7 billion people on the planet, right? And you need to be able to control those 7 billion people. You can't have everyone going off and doing their own thing. So being able to get a brain interface into everyone's head, especially with an AI interface, right? Being able to send out some code that could take 1 billion people and have them do a certain thing or think a certain way, or maybe they imagine this in elections, right? Imagine if they could manipulate your thoughts to vote for, they try to do that now with commercials. Being able to control the herds of people is very, very important to the powers that be. We are the money that comes in for them. We are, we're everything. We are the cattle, and we're providing the milk. And they have to be, in their minds, they want to be able to control every little bit. They want to be able to put subtle things into our heads. They want us to believe whatever it is they want us to believe to benefit the power and the money that comes from this all. So I definitely believe that the big picture is to network all of the people to be able to then more easily control the perception. Imagine censorship like on YouTube now, it's getting out of control. Imagine if you couldn't think certain things, right? I mean, you
get an electrical shock.
It's gonna be bananas. yeah, there you go.
As soon as you,
So, I mean, definitely, I think they have to care about all of us. They have to, because in all reality, if things go wrong for them, there's enough of us, we could rise up and take any army that there is. There's more of us. So they have to be able to think about this on a larger scale.
That's why the Stonehenge says that they want to, that's a plan. That's a blueprint. That's what global elites want. They want X amount of people. This is under 500 million. They say that, because it's going to be there's too many people to control everybody, and people, that have power, that have money, it's not enough anymore. They want to start controlling people. We've had this couple hundred year experiment where we got to control ourselves, and serfdom didn't exist, and it's coming back, and they're pushing for it, and they're going to take every advantage, especially if they can control your thoughts, or even just knowing what you're thinking. Reading it, even if you just read everybody's mind, you can change what you're doing. As people are, oh shit, they're starting to get aware, you start shifting what you're doing, and then everything calms down again.
Yeah, and imagine. So there was not all that long ago, there was an incident where Edward Snowden kind of ratted out and whistleblowed on the government for listening in on people's conversations and turning on cell phone mics and gathering data from GPSs and doing all of this without the knowledge of the people. This has already happened with lesser tech. We've pushed we pushed Ed Snowden out of the country. He's not allowed back in. He'd be faced with treason and all of these things. Do you really think we're going to stop at just cell phones? No, man. These people have agendas, and this will be a good way to push that agenda.
Okay, here's my argument, though. My argument is this whole idea that they want to control us, man. They want to control every aspect of us, man. So here's my argument against this. Let's say they get ultimate effing control. Like they just freaking control us like we're mindless robot drones, okay? Let's just say that future happens. The people that are in charge, are they freaking that happy about this world? There's people that are in charge that are living the good life. They're already living the good life. They're already effing billionaires. They've already got a million different islands, places. They've got all the Ferraris and no, wait a minute. Let me just finish this. They've got everything they can possibly want. Now you're telling me they want to have everything they can possibly want and also have 7 billion mindless autonomons, whatever, just walking around doing things like, I'm going to do this for my billionaire leader. I'm going to do this for no, why would they want that? Is that a future that even these like psychopathic billionaires, is that like if you're Hitler or something? I don't even think Hitler would want that. No one, you wouldn't want that.
It's not supposed to be an obvious thing though, right? It's supposed to be a subtle thing. Here's the deal. So they have the Ferraris, they have the houses, they have the money, but their kids don't. The kids of their kids don't. This is all stuff. Everything that's done over all of these years is to keep the control, not just to gain the control, but to keep the control, right? You have to be able to do things, and you have to be able to do them kind of subtly, so people always feel like they have control, even though they don't. And then you're able. So social media, for example. Social media censors a lot of things. And they censor a lot of things because they need to control perception. If you control perception, you control people. You control how they think, you control what they believe, and then you control how they act. So it's an easy way to keep people in line, and to do it subtly. Most people don't even know about all of the censorship happening on YouTube and Facebook and all this stuff. I mean, maybe it's starting to come into the limelight now because of the coronavirus and, a lot of the censoring with that. But I mean, honestly, people just aren't really even aware. And that's kind of how they're going to want it to be. They're going to just want these little tiny codes of malware that just subtly put in these little, maybe this is all speculation. This could be complete and utter horseshit. You know what I mean? But it could also be a thing. So it depends. You also have to think about not the people that are in power right now, maybe not the people that are in power in the next 10 years, but who's going to be in power in 50 years when we're all connected to the internet of people, right? Who's in power then? What are their agendas going to be? What are they going to try to do? What if imagine if we lived in a country like China, where everything, or North Korea, where everything was kept, where only the things that you want to know are told to you by your government, and everything else is filtered out. How is that going to play out for people that live in countries like that? You know, I feel like this could absolutely be the ultimate way of control, but the people still have the power at this point. If people say, I will not take that brain interfacing unit because blah, blah, and blah, and if you fix those things, and I have control over the data that comes in and out of my head, then maybe we're talking a little bit more consumer wise, you know. But people need to be able to control the level of privacy of data that comes in and out of their head, and not have companies like Facebook that are just going to force it on them.
Do you really want data going into your head from Facebook or any big company? I don't want them pushing their crap in my head, dude.
Yeah. It's gonna be rough, but at the same time, I really, you know, if you think about it in this standpoint too, let's say me and Roots and Anthony, we all go in for a job interview, right? I have a Neuralink and you guys don't. Maybe Roots is good at, you know, at the researching part. Anthony, you're good at video editing, but I come in and I'm like, I can do anything, guys. Tell me what to do, and I think, and my brain is the internet. How are you going to beat me out on that? There's going to be immense social pressure to do these things, because you will be an inferior human that would maybe have a hard time providing for your family if you don't give into the pressure of having some kind of brain interfacing device. Companies are going to, you know, I mean, I would imagine that they would look for resumes, you know, of people that have BIs or BMIs, and kind of maybe weed out the ones that don't. Maybe there'll be a revolution of, you know, you can't discriminate against people that, you know, that don't have brain machine interfacing in their head. So, you know, we're gonna get to this social, you know, fork in the road where it's going to be really weird. It could be borderline evolution, not revolution, but evolution, you know, where we end up evolving into an AI human, you know, all connected to the internet, and, you know, over peer pressure and things like that. It's going to be really interesting to see how people deal with that in the future. You know, will there be villages of people that are just brain interfaceless people, you know, that are all living in communities and don't want anything to do with any of the cyborgs, you know? It'll be interesting.
They call it Texas. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
They call them free thinkers. They don't exist very much anymore.
Yeah, they don't. But and this will make it worse.
Yeah,
sure.
So it's interesting you brought up this idea here, because one of the interviews that I listened to in preparation for this episode is there's an interview with Gabe's son. And I don't know if you guys have heard this interview, but it was like Valve News Network. You know, the Valve News Network guy has this like long interview with Gabe's son. And obviously, being the son of Gaben himself, you're going to hear some things from Papa Gaben, and you're going to get some ideas about, you know, some of these things. And brain-computer interfacing is a very big aspect of this, and a lot of the questions were in relationship to brain-computer interfacing and what is actually going to happen here. And that's one of the things that he brought up. He brought up this idea that there's going to be people that have this and people that don't. And it's going to create a have and have not kind of a situation. And that when this initially comes online, this is going to be very expensive. This is something that Elon Musk discussed in this unveiling, this announcement that they recently had, is he said that initially this is going to be very expensive, but they hope to get it to the point where it's a couple thousand dollars, like you're going in for LASIK or something like that. But that could be like 20 years later. In the very beginning, there could be people like, oh, he's got a freaking brain-computer interface. He's got a Neuralink. He paid $250,000 to get a Neuralink. But whenever this guy comes into your local area, he's like, you know, thinking all the, like, that's the other question too, is it going to feel right to like instantly know what the square root of whatever is, and like that building is 27.8 meters tall. It is built out of titanium sulfate. It was constructed in 1970. Like, to just have this information just flooding into your brain is like, it might be like, turn it off, just turn it effing off, man. This is driving me insane. Skiva, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course it will be at first. Everything, all the changes we do in the world are strange at first. Back in the day, they thought it was really weird that people were flying around above the clouds. You know what I mean? Like people thought they'd never get used to that stuff. People thought they'd never get used to the idea of being able to leave orbit. There's a lot of things that people are like, oh, that is so bizarre that'll never become the norm. And then all of a sudden it becomes the norm, and you don't even think about it like that anymore. It's not. It then becomes abnormal to not do that thing. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of where we're going to end up. At first, it's going to be, oh, it's super weird. Oh, you're a weirdo. You have a brain interface unit. They know your thoughts. They know everything. But then 10 years down the line, it's going to be like, like I said, there's going to be people that can't get jobs because they are limited in their thinking and how fast they can retrieve data, how fast they can learn a certain skill and learn it well, and pressure and greed and things like that are going to make people maybe do things that they didn't want to do. Once that shit's in there, it's not that you can't take it out, but I feel like you're not going to want to take it out. Imagine if you were really sad one day and you're like, I don't want to be sad anymore, man. And you go on your phone and, oh, I feel great. Oh man, everything is wonderful. And that's things that they're talking about doing. They're talking about being able to take the parts of the brain that are firing that are maybe overfiring, and rerouting some of those signals and putting stimuli over here in this part of the brain that's going to make you feel better, or that's going to cure depression or anxiety or this or that. Maybe you just get over a marriage. You just had a big divorce. Imagine not having to deal with that pain. Imagine being able to just turn it off with your phone. Oh, I feel great. Those are all things that are going to be, people are going to make decisions that maybe they wouldn't make because they're in a certain situation, or they didn't get the job they wanted, or, and then eventually over time, this is going to become a normal thing. And it'll be weird if you don't have one. You'll be subhuman. You'll be, less than everyone else, and you'll be valued less. So that's my kind of thoughts on that.
Roots. Actually, wait a minute. So what we're talking about here, you started to take us into this brave new world at the end there, Skiva, where you're starting to get on some stuff of the incredible things that could some of it is incredible. Honestly, when we think of some of this brain-computer interface stuff, like the longer-term stuff of writing to the brain, because we're mostly talking about reading to the brain. Now we're getting into this idea of writing to the brain. And when you start talking about writing to the brain, the possibilities are virtually endless. They're spectacular. They're amazing. In some ways, it seems like it could potentially create a virtual heaven on earth. But of course, there's always that flip side where it can create a virtual hell. And so, but let's start out with the good stuff in the beginning. Okay, so one of the things that brain-computer interfaces could possibly be able to do, say about 15 years from now, we could be in a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where you can wake up the following day and watch your dreams. You could watch the dreams that you had the night before like you're watching a YouTube video. In fact, as you're dreaming at night, this dream could be picked up by the brain-computer interface. It could record it, and it could put it onto your TV, so when you get up in the morning, now you can watch your dreams in crystal clear high definition. I know it sounds science fiction, but it's not, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about hacking into the brain. We're talking about bypassing what the brain normally does and doing different things like that. So this idea of being able to watch your dreams, pretty incredible, right? Okay, well, what about this other idea? This idea of people having emotions, and you can basically purchase, or sample the emotions that they're having. So everything that's going on in our brain, like everything that we feel, every emotion that we feel, like I can go back to a memory. I have this one memory where I was playing baseball. I think it was like 6th grade or whatever. I was like in a little league thing. And I have this one memory. It's like one of the highlights of my entire life, right? Like when you think about that one special thing that you did one day. And so I was playing baseball one day, and I wasn't that good of a baseball player. My dad was like a ridiculously good baseball player, could have been in the minor leagues and stuff, and he had to work. It's a long story, but anyways, he wasn't able to pursue his baseball dream, and he wanted to live it through me, right? And I was never that good, but I did have this one day where the pitcher threw the ball, and I just yanked that ball like so effing far. And that feeling that I felt, like I can remember little bits and pieces of that feeling, but I can't replay the entire scenario. But with brain-computer interfaces, this could possibly change, where I can literally re-experience that entire scenario from a first person, with tactile feel, with sensations, with smells, with sound, the whole ball of wax. And so now this could be far away. This could be 50 years away. This could be 100 years away. But it does appear to be basically inevitable. And the mind races ahead. Think of all the experiences that anybody has ever had, and you can basically just download that experience, and you can get in your chair and you can just sit in your seat. Like, for example, I don't really want to jump out of an airplane, but I got to imagine it's a very exhilarating feeling. Up at 20,000 feet, you jump out of an airplane and you're skydiving or whatever. Imagine just downloading that sensation. You're sitting in a chair and you're wobbling around like this or whatever you're doing, because it's going to be weird. But you get that sensation, oh my God, I'm jumping out of an airplane, and then it's over with and you're like, whoa, I just jumped out of an airplane. And this is virtual reality, like virtual reality you could possibly not imagine. Think of your favorite entertainers that are performing on stage. Like, we don't have the sensation of performing on stage and having 100,000 people like yeah, yelling and screaming, and like the feelings that a rock star has when they walk out on stage for the first time, or just all these different emotions. And then of course you go into the sex. You go into the sex side of the coin. Imagine
the porn's
that,
gonna
ladies
rock
and
that.
gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Now, Roots, what are you thinking about all this? It sounds pretty crazy. It sounds unbelievable. But would you like to? What if this was available right now? Would you want to experience some of these different emotions, like the emotions of somebody climbing Mount Everest and getting at the very top of Mount Everest, and or maybe an emotion of just serene peace and calm and just total relaxation? You can get some emotions from the Dalai Lama. What do you think about all this?
I think it's. I saw a movie back when I was a kid. I think it was called Dreamscape or something like that, and that was exactly the premise. I think that was the name of it. But you recorded your memories, and you could like buy them and put it on, and you could re-experience somebody having sex or.
That was Strange Days, I believe.
What was it?
Strange Days.
Oh, maybe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it had something to do with, you could like murder somebody. I mean, it would go dark as well. You'd see a lot of weird stuff. But my question to you would be, I think it would be kind of cool in some respect. Especially if, like, even from the aspect of, okay, I want to feel what Anthony feels, how he feels about spiders, because I'm not afraid of spiders. You know what I mean? Like phobias, which sounds weird, but some people would want to delve into that as well. But my question is like, would it be the exact same experience? Because somewhere in the back of your mind, even though you're feeling it's real, it's not real. So that in and of itself would make it a different, similar, but not quite exact. And that could be kind of...
But what makes things real?
Well,
right? There is no, you're not experiencing anything real. What you're doing is you have a processor that floats around in a vat in your head, and it shoots and it takes in different light sources, it takes in different things, and it transfers that into different electrical impulses into your head, which you then assume is this or that. So you're not really seeing anything firsthand, So the question will really become, what is real? What's the difference between me doing this or me downloading this feeling and this experience? There was that movie Strange Days, which really took my imagination for a ride when I was a little kid. And they were able to buy experiences and things, and then put on a headset and experience those things happening. And then the movie did take a dark turn where it was about, like, people in the black market would pay big money for for murders and this and that, because they wanted to feel that rush and that adrenaline of doing it without actually doing it, right? So but it really does come down to that, like, what is real? How do you define that? I don't, man, I mean, it's going to be the same neurons firing in your brain. Your brain's going to produce the same chemicals as the person who actually did these things, and I would imagine that eventually there'll be a database of experiences that we'll be able to kind of to put up, right? Well, I mean, maybe we'll create our own Akashic records, if you know what that is, right? Where we know, we'll be able to record everything happening and being able to go back and look. Imagine being able to go, oh my God, those guys that just went up to the moon on the rocket, what did that feel like? Imagine being able to, like, get into the SpaceX rocket and go to the space station and feel the G-force and the throttle and the smells that they experience and the feelings and the fear and the anxiety and the happiness and excitement. I mean, I think there's going to be big markets for things like that. It's, and we're not just making this stuff up particularly, maybe Elon Musk is making it up because, he's saying that there will be a time that he sees in the future where you'll be able to take memories and download them, or you'll be able to take complete save states of your brain and save your brain state and then re-upload it to either another carbon-based life form or a robot or something like that. And you'll be able so you'd almost be able to achieve immortality with something like this if you could do a save state on your brain. So, we get into a lot of really crazy and ethical and interesting things here on what would be right. I mean, would it be right for you to, for example, would it be cheating if you had the experience of sleeping with another woman, if you were married, and the experience was so real down to the orgasm that, like, right? Like, is that, like, where does this leave us? You know what I mean? Everything changes. So
yeah. Well, one of the things I've thought about with all of this, like you go down that rabbit hole. For example, Skiva, you were mentioning on your phone, like the dopamine receptors and all of that. Just feeling good, just feeling elation. Like, man, I've been feeling down today, so I'm just going to activate my elation sensor. And oh, I'm feeling it was immediately activating. Oh, that feels good. Oh, I'm going to hit it again. I'm going to hit it. Like, I can see a situation where we turn into, like, these, like, straight up addicts. Have you ever seen one of those movies where, like, people are, like, in the corner of the house and they're living in filth and they're just, like, injecting themselves over and over again?
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't it be like
we are addicts, though? I mean, everything we experience is a chemical that's released in the brain. We experience something, and certain neurons fire, and then certain chemicals move to certain parts of the brain, and we experience these feelings. All feelings are chemical based, right? So we're already junkies in that sense, where everything we do invokes a chemical in our brain that makes us feel a certain way. So if you imagine having control over that, being able to hit some buttons and all of a sudden you're the happiest you've ever been, there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of weird stuff where people just want to feel good all the time. Or, I don't know, will we even be able to have this kind of granular control? I'm sure someday we will, but it's gonna get weird. The future's gonna get weird.
A lot of emotionally stunted people, because we're supposed to go through emotions for a reason. And I think of Star Trek, the one with his Spock's brother, and that one, his Spock's brother's trying to take away people's memories, their painful memories, and Kirk basically says he didn't want to do it because those memories are who he is, right? Or take away the pain. And like we go through bad things. If we could just shut off everything with the push of a button, and I'm depressed because of a divorce. Well, we grow during those times. And if you just shut that off, I just think what you described, it's a fucking nightmare, dude. Like goes bad quick.
Yeah. I agree. But people will, just like people get drunk to avoid their emotions or something or whatever, they do heroin. I don't know. It will have the same thing, right? We'll have the same abuse of some of that stuff, I would imagine. I know there's times in my life where I wish I had a button like that, and I don't know that I wouldn't abuse it when that time came if it was readily available. I'd like to think that I would want to experience life the way it is. But once it's to the point where you can just run an app, I mean, it's going to be bizarro land. And, I don't know if we want to switch subjects yet, but I really want to know. So as of right now, this thing connects, this Neuralink is a small coin-shaped thing that goes in place of a chunk of skull that's flush with your head. And it connects via Bluetooth to a phone app. Now, phones get malware. Phones get viruses. What if there's a virus that attacks your brain and makes things happen? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a computer security guy. I'm an IT guy, and a lot of the ways I have to think is how can I get it so people can't exploit this server, or how, or not get into this network. How are we going to make it so people can't get into the app that controls what's going on in our head? Imagine a piece of malware that some shitty little kid writes that just like floods your head with serotonin and makes you a serotonin burnout for the rest of your life. Just weird shit like that. Are we going to get hit with computer viruses that we have to worry about it affecting our brain permanently? Malware, things that intercept our thoughts and the products we're thinking about and things we're thinking about and sends it back to third-party companies in China or Russia or something. Like, these are all things that we really are going to have to consider, and we're going to have to think about how we're going to put a stop to that stuff and how we're going to really protect our heads. Imagine if you were sitting there and all of a sudden something happened to your child. You know what I mean? Like, your brain you have no idea what just happened. You know what I mean? Like, viruses. What is going to happen with viruses? I got to know that.
Well, one thing on the virus thing, I mean, you could create this device where it would not be connected to just an outside internet, like you, and then you think, well, if it's not connected to the outside internet, then you don't get all these benefits because you don't instantly have all this information that just floods. But here's the thing: I think what you could do is you could take all of the world's information, like all the encyclopedias, like the definition of every word, how to speak English, French, Spanish, whatever. You have all this information could be on a solid state drive that is not connected to the outside world, but you're connected to that. And then so for someone to hack you, they would have to hack that device, which is not.
But that's going to remove all the benefits. So you'd be able to have predefined things, right? But in order to be able to like, let's say I wanted to telepathically talk to you. You know what I mean? We're not even in the same state. Maybe I could think, "Hey, Anthony, are you there?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm here." Without.
Yeah, but how do? But I want the phone to ring. I don't want to answer your telepathic.
Yeah,
thoughts,
right.
But
start spamming Anthony with thoughts.
But I want to go back to the pleasure idea, like just like activate, like, okay, for example, an orgasm, right? A sexual orgasm. Like, you have a sexual orgasm, but the actual feeling is happening in your brain. And so is there just going to be an orgasm button? And I just, bam, oh, you know what I mean? And then it's like, can you spam that endlessly? And just like, yeah, he's been just experiencing 100 orgasms in a row. No. And then but what happens to your brain? Yeah. Like, we're talking about hacking your brain and experiencing all these different things, but is there going to be some kind of like I mean, what I'm trying to explain here is, like, nature has created human beings in this particular way. We've evolved into this creature that we've evolved into, and we've evolved into this creature that experiences small bursts of pleasure here and there. We also experience extreme pain in small bursts. And then most of our days are pretty neutral. We have relatively neutral days. We're feeling kind of down. We're feeling kind of up. And then like this unbelievable thing will happen and we'll have an explosion of happiness or bliss for a very limited period of time. So now what happens when you start just activating these extreme levels of bliss and happiness multiple times throughout a day? You know, there's the whole addiction
We're gonna
idea.
find out, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to find out, and it's not going to be good. Our bodies are machines that just can't do anything we throw at them. You know, there's issues. You know, you take too much of a certain drug that produces a certain chemical in your brain and you break yourself. You know, you got to go through therapy. You got to do all these things.
Wait a minute, though. So, like, for example, if you drink a bunch of alcohol and you get the effect of being drunk, right? But that physical alcohol that is actually running through your system then causes you to have this like splitting headache. But couldn't we get the effect of the alcohol high by just creating it in your head, but there's no alcohol running through the system, so there's no headache that's created? So will we really have these ramifications that will develop?
Well, but you still when you create those things, you're creating chemical imbalances in your brain, and that's why you're starting to feel that way. You know, just like if you were depressed and you want to get happy, you know, you see something, you see a funny movie or whatever, it's creating dopamine and serotonin, and it's putting, you know, it's flooding your brain with it, and you're becoming more and more happy. These are all chemical reactions that happen, all of them. Everything is a chemical reaction. So how do you know, there's going to be this debate, maybe, like, do we regulate what these apps can and can't do that interface with your brain interfacing chip, and then there's going to be groups of people that say, well, you can't tell me what I can and can't do with my body and my brain and my chemicals, and you know what I mean? It's gonna get weird, man. And I don't have a vision of how we solve some of these problems in my head, but I will tell you this, from the whole orgasm thing, we have seen porn drive industries further and further along than they ever would have been if porn wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? 360 video for VR, just all kinds of different things. Bandwidth and how we stream videos online and how we do all of these things have largely in part been researched and developed and funded by porn industry. And this, oh my God, the porn industry with brain interfacing, I don't even know what we're going to run into here. It's going to get really friggin' weird, man.
We're not going to reproduce anymore. Like, that's the thing. People are so lazy anymore. Right? If you could have all of that, if you had a button you could push and just have an orgasm, not only, you know, serotonin, there's a limit as far as what your brain will produce, right? And then you'll just
become a burnout.
Yeah. So like it just wouldn't be good from that perspective. So they'd have to limit it. But I just think it would just become a real, I mean, it's already in some respects a hassle to have a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
People will put up with it for the sex.
Yeah.
And then you don't even need the sex anymore.
Is it a good thing though? Let me ask you this. So when I was a kid, I remember the world population when I was in elementary school was somewhere around 4 billion. Now, you know, 30 years or whatever long it is, 25 years, I don't know, we're at 7.7 billion. So you got to imagine another couple hundred years from now, how are we going to deal with all the people and the food shortages and this and that? So maybe, I don't know, I'm just playing devil's advocate here with some of this stuff, but maybe it's a good thing that people don't just friggin' reproduce just to reproduce because they're bored and they're drunk and they just get home from the club with this chick they don't even know. You know what I mean? Maybe part of it is a good thing that we're able to experience those things without the ramification of bringing a child into the world that maybe we weren't ready to have. You know, and plus, you know, what are we going to do with all the people? It could be a good thing.
You know, I have a thought. So I have a couple of thoughts that are a little bit, they're not exactly what you're talking about right here, but I just want to talk about them before I forget about them. So one of the thoughts that I have is that you will be able to learn things through this technology. You'll basically be able to acquire learning without any of the effort that is normally required to learn something. So one of the things that they believe will be you'll be able to do eventually is you'll be able to take someone that has learned Spanish and they are freaking fluent, absolutely fluent in Spanish. They spent years, they went to South American countries, they lived in a different country for a number of years, and so they're incredibly fluent in Spanish, right? And so in their brain, in some spot in their brain, they have all this knowledge that they've acquired of this knowledge of Spanish, and that you'll be able to actually have like a direct transfer with them where their knowledge basically just transfers right into your head. So one day you don't know how to speak Spanish, the next day you're effing fluent in Spanish. And
what's everyone thinking here? I know kung fu.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Exactly. But when I heard that, like there's a part, like that kills a part of me for some reason. I don't know if it's like just like a jealousy thing, or it's like in my day we actually had to read books and actually had to study shit, and now people just download quantum mechanics and they understand every little aspect. Like, so here's one of the problems I see is like this is like creating like this superhuman race, right? Where everybody knows everything. And everybody is infinitely knowledgeable about everything. And then you're living in these virtual worlds. Okay, so here's this other virtual world thing. So Gaben's son, like when that guy did the interview with Gaben's son, one of the things he mentioned is like he was thinking a little bit farther term here, but he believes that there will be this future where humans will elect to have themselves put in essentially a cryostasis, alive. You will be alive. You'll be frozen alive, like inanimately alive, somehow kept alive, but you're like inanimate and you won't be like really aging or anything, and all your processes will have basically been minimized, but your consciousness will be in this virtual world. So like your brain, your consciousness will be operating in this virtual world. So you basically freeze your body. It could be there for hundreds of years. And you're just experiencing these incredible virtual worlds that could be anything you want them to be. You could be anybody you want to be. It's basically Ready Player One, but effing real, without the locomotion problems, without running through a downtown city and worrying that you're going to run into a mailbox or something because your tracking isn't working right. So your locomotion is going to be perfect. You're in these virtual worlds. And then so I started thinking about this, and I'm like, man, what if you can make every person on planet Earth incredibly beautiful, incredibly fit, so there's no fat people, there's no ugly people, there's no people that have some weird deformity, everybody's effing perfect. Won't we get sick of that shit? Like what do you have, how do you differentiate anybody from anybody else when everybody is effing flawless? There's no flaws. Everybody has unlimited knowledge. Roots, why don't I go to you first? What do you think about this strange new world where everybody, like imagine if you moved to some city where every woman was drop dead gorgeous, every man was freaking Brad Pitt in his prime. Like, do you want to live in that effing world?
No, it's a Dean Koontz book is what it is. Because they're all the people in those books are always beautiful or whatever. I think the reason why that bothers you so much, Anthony, because it cheapens it.
Yeah.
You know, like if the whole reason why it's so, you know, these people that spend that time and they go to Brazil and they learn that language, and I mean it's a feat. They've done something. It's something that they can be proud of, that they worked for. And I think we're moving into dangerous times as far as, I mean, we're already laziest. I mean, we're lazy, dude. As a people, as a humanity, we're lazy. And if you're telling me I don't even have to learn to a language anymore, you can just beam it into my head. I think it's not a good way to go down there. And I think the scenario that you speak of, and of course this is me being negative in some respects, I don't think it exists. I don't think we get to a point where everybody's learned perfect and whatever, because I still think that there are people that will not let it happen. They need to have this shit. We don't get it. They get it. We don't. And so it's going to create that divide of the haves and the have-not, kind of like Elysium. I think a lot of these ideas are put out there for a reason. They're getting people kind of conditioned that this is what we got coming to us. You know, we're going to get the rich elite are going to get all the technology. They're going to all live in some space station. We're going to live in shit down here, or some respect of that, if they can pull off what they want. Yeah.
Skiva?
So I'm going to go the other route here. I'm going to say maybe it wouldn't be bad. I feel like, what's the ultimate goal that everyone kind of wants? Like, if you were like, if you had one wish, what would it be? People would probably say like one peace and unity throughout the world, right? So imagine if we were all able to connect up to this network. We were all able to clone and grow humans that didn't have a consciousness. They were just shells for us to pop back into, because maybe we wouldn't freeze our bodies and have to go and then restore our bodies and put ourselves back in, just grow another body, kind of like altered carbon or something like that, or some kind of cyborg thing, right? What if all of our thoughts could go onto the internet and we could all see each other's thoughts? Wouldn't it create this unity, this sense of, hey, there is no more black and white and, all of these different races. There is only humanity. And together we now can know all of the things, all of the feelings, and we can kind of evolve into this giant, this oneness.
Okay, quick question, Skiva. So this ultimate utopia that you're talking about, what do people do day to day? Like what's a normal day? Like you get up and do what?
Yeah.
See, that's the problem. The problem is, if you know everything, if you've transcended everything, what the F do you do with your time? Like what are you going to work on?
But then people, maybe you don't need to work on anything. Maybe there would be enough human thought out there that you could live and ponder in this internet of people, as they say, right? And that you could figure out how to make certain things go away, and you could figure out how to save the planet and do things without, putting all of this carbon dioxide and all of this crap that we pour into the atmosphere, and how we flood things, and we just pile things into the oceans. We could figure all that stuff out. We could save the planet. We could figure out how to get off and maybe do other things on other planets. Think about this. What about this? I'm going to throw a little loop here. What if, and I can't remember who I heard talk about this, what if the aliens that everyone sees are really us in the future after all of this shit has already gone down, right? They don't need mouths anymore. They can talk via telepathically because they have this technology. They don't need to look different anymore. Maybe they're just growing these bodies, right? That all of these little gray and green beings or whatever, and they just download the consciousness, into that body every time, they're about to die. They're, this was an interesting theory I heard someone talk about on YouTube. And I found it interesting. Maybe these aliens are coming back here to see how we're doing on our progress to become, the evolutionized version of ourselves that they already are. You can go really deep and weird with
Hey,
the
quick
subject,
second about the alien thing. Just because we've done a couple of alien related shows, one thing I wanted to mention really quick is in doing this episode here, I have this footage. This is the animal care team at Neuralink, right? And they're taking care of these little piggies. And, they're doing everything for the little piggies. And then, of course, there's a piggy laying on the operating table. Aw, little piggy. You can see he's been sedated. They freaking put something into the piggy's brain. So here, the reason I'm showing all this, and they're analyzing it, and they're like, oh, we're not hurting these piggies. We're just finding out information from these piggies. But the reason I think about all of this is, like, imagine these people, right, that are talking and doing all this. These are the aliens, and the little piggies are the humans. Like, when they abduct us and we have no idea what's going on, they're doing all these weird things. Dude, shit just repeats over and over and over again. This is one of the reasons why I do believe aliens grab us. They freaking take us up, put us on tables, do experiments on us. And for us, for them, we're the pigs. And they're like, oh, we're not hurting these little pigs. These little pigs can't understand shit. They're at such a, these pigs are primitive. You know, they don't know what's going on. Their brains are tiny. They don't have any awareness of anything. We're doing these little things, but, you know, we're not hurting them, and we're feeding them, and we're taking care of them. And like, I feel like there's always a bigger fish. You know what I mean? Like, remember in that one Star Wars movie, there's always a bigger fish. And there's creatures out there infinitely more advanced than us that look at us as dumb as these little piggies are, and they think they're like helping us and take. Anyway, it's a side note thing, but I was just watching this trailer and it just popped into my head.
Maybe they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they are helping us. Maybe we wouldn't exist without them. Who knows? We don't know any of this stuff.
I just want to tell the aliens right now that if they think anal probing us doesn't hurt us, it's not comfortable, I'm assuming.
See, that's the thing. We need butt interfacing and not brain interfacing. But, you know, one of the things that I thought Elon was interesting that Elon was talking about was he was also talking about putting, you know, you have a Neuralink in your brain, but what if you could also put a Neuralink at the base of your spine, right? And kind of reroute at like a digital shunt, right? So if you had a severed spine and you couldn't walk anymore, what if you could reroute those signals and not have to use your spine? So I think it's going to be amazing when we get to see the first paraplegic or tetraplegic be able to walk, or the first blind person that were able to turn their sight back on. You know what I mean? I mean, I think some of these medical things are just going to be absolutely mind-boggling, and when they happen, people are really going to start to be like, oh my God, this is all very real. This is all very real. Well, you know, what if you were a parent that was, you know, you had a highly autistic child, and maybe you could have the surgery done and spend all of your money to have the surgery done and then make your child quote unquote normal again. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are going to have a lot of ethical issues that are going to want to go ahead and experiment with this stuff, because, you know, the people that have a lesser quality of life that just want that higher quality of life are going to be willing to do this for sure. You know, and I have a pretty good quality of life and I'm willing to do it. So Neuralink, if you're watching, call me.
Okay. One thing I did. Oh, go ahead, Roots.
I was just going to say one of the things that Elon Musk thing, that the video you posted, Skiba, that the guy was saying that was a recruitment video, right? It wasn't so much as like, hey, buy this. It was like,
yeah, they weren't looking for funding.
In, right?
Yeah, they want better scientists. They want neurosurgeons. They want neurologists. They want to get all the best of the best people. Yeah, pig caretakers. Yeah. People caretakers. No, they want everything, man. You know, they were just given a breakthrough device award from the FDA, which means they're going to be able to start testing on humans soon. You know, so it's going to be interesting.
Imagine if you're like, yeah, I work for Neuralink. Oh, what do you do there? You're a neuroscientist? No, I take care of the pigs. I just clean up the pig poop. But, you know, I work for Neuralink. Look at my badge. But one thing I did grab here, so let's go back to the world of reality. We kind of went off the chains a little bit there. Let's come back to the year 2020, and I've got a clip of Gaben, Lord Gaben himself, because look, we're all in this VR world, right? We like VR, and we like the idea of having some incredible VR experiences that are maybe vastly superior than what we would get with putting a VR headset on our head. And Gaben made some interesting comments. I have those comments, and so why don't we go ahead and check those out right now. So let's see here. I'm going to switch over here, and I'm going to throw on a little Gaben video. He makes a comment about the Matrix, and also makes a comment about companies that are not taking this seriously and the danger that they're putting themselves in. So let's go ahead and hear this. He makes a comment.
So it's exciting now that we have something like VR where we say, oh, we feel really strongly that this is going to give us some exciting opportunities. You know, and like I was saying earlier, the brain-computer interface stuff is, you know, we're way closer to the Matrix than people realize, right? It's not going to be the Matrix. The Matrix is, you know, a movie, and it misses all the interesting technical subtleties and just how weird that the post-brain computer interface world is going to be. But it's going to have huge impact on the kinds of experiences that we can create for people.
Do you see a gaming tie into that, or is it a whole separate sort of concern for you? Not concern, interest.
No, I think that it's an extinction level event for every entertainment form that's not thinking about this. It's gonna change. If you're in the entertainment business and you're not thinking about this, you're gonna be thinking about it a lot more in the future.
All right. Well, yeah, that was it. So basically what Gaben was talking about in these two different clips, first he talks about how the Matrix isn't as far away as we think, and that activating someone's visual cortex is going to be it's a problem that they basically can figure out. It's not that incredibly difficult. And then the other thing he talks about is an extinction level event, that the entire entertainment industry, if you're not thinking about this, you're going to be in some serious trouble, because like there's ideas where like songs can just stream right into your head, where you don't need to have any kind of headphones or anything like that. You can have songs, entertainment, and then like in terms of like movies, and of course, I mean, well, we talked about all these experiences and stuff where you can have someone else's experience and you can basically experience the exact thing that someone else has experienced in first person. That's a little bit longer term. But one of the questions I have about all of this is like activating somebody, like putting a video image into someone's head. I really want to know what that's going to look like, especially in the earliest days of this. For example, okay, so I'm standing here and, you know, I'm seeing this room and I have all this visual information that is, you know, wrapping all around me, and I have this ginormous field of view, and if we're talking frame rates and we're talking resolution, like how would I even describe what the resolution is of this experience that I'm having right now? And the frame rate, I think it's like what, 4,000 frames or so, like it would, like real life is like 4,000 frames or something a second, or 4,000 hertz or whatever. Like they've estimated what like reality is, if you could get a game to run at the same bandwidth as actual reality. And so now if you're saying, okay, we can take over your visual cortex and we can just pump shit right into your brain, how do they format that? Like what is it like when it first turns on? What am I going to see? Is everything just going to be black, and then I'm going to see this screen that's floating here, and then it's going to wrap around me like that? Like these are the questions I have, man. Like what are we going to see in the beginning? Like, and is it like when it first comes on, it's like, oh shit, my freaking eyeballs have been taken over, and now I'm seeing all kinds, like you could be in a panic attack or something. Somebody might have a freaking heart attack or something when that first comes on. Like, is this all going to be safe? Actually, we can go to that as well. Like, think of the health implications. Remember when I said, look, I've never experienced jumping out of an airplane, but if I can download an experience where I experience somebody jumping out of an airplane, or I experience somebody like being in the ocean with a great white and like barely escaping with their lives before a great white was about to eat them, like you want to talk about VR potentially being dangerous, because it could create some kind of situation, you know, heart attack, stroke, whatever, that like you react to something that's like too intense, it's too powerful. In VR, we don't think that's really going to happen because it's not that immersive, you know, it's not, but
I don't know, bro. When I played Resident Evil 7, in VR, I legitimately thought a heart attack was a possibility. Like, that game scared the bejesus out of me so much that I was really like, oh my God, like I might actually like come around a corner and have a friggin' heart attack. So if things get more immersive, I could definitely see that becoming a thing. And, you know, one of the things we didn't actually touch on was how in the first presentation by Elon Musk, how they were putting pigs on treadmills, right? And they were able to accurately detect where the pig was thinking it wanted its limb to go, and it was showing that limb as opposed to where the limb was really moving. So right then and there, boom, VR locomotion solved, right? You just think and your legs in game move, just like you would really think to move your legs. That to me has incredible possibility. But I'll tell you what.
Wait, Skiba.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought that up, where they knew where the pig's legs were going to move ahead of time. What about this? There's debates about whether or not we have free will. Like, do we really have free will? Like, maybe some of these questions could also be answered with this technology, and the answers to these questions might be answers we really don't want to know, but we might find out anyway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, free will, absolutely. That's a whole different rabbit hole we could go down, because then, that's more along the lines of, simulation theory as well. Is this stuff all predetermined? Do we actually have control over what we're doing and our thoughts and our next decision, or has it already been made already? That's a lot of interesting things. I'm more thinking like if I'm in a game, if I'm in Blade and Sorcery or something, and I want to kick a guy and I don't want to stick a Vive tracker on my foot, will I be able to just think, just feel naturally, what I would when I want to lift my leg and throw it out there? I think that that being able to locomote like that and have your brain actually feel like it's moving and maybe creating some kind of footstep sensation on the bottom of your foot, I think that's going to be pretty legit. The horror aspect, dude, I have a hard time with VR horror to this day. It is ultra fucking scary. It really, really is. And if you put me in a brain interfacing horror experience, dude, I'm too much of a baby. I don't even want to know what, the anxiety, the stress that you can cause your body.
Dude, I'm not trying to do that either. Like an actual, imagine Resident Evil 7, but you're freaking in Resident Evil 7. You're touching things.
I could barely handle it on the PlayStation VR, and we all know the resolution and all the stuff with the PSVR, and that didn't even have hand presence. The gun is kind of stuck to your chin, and I could barely handle that. When you get cut in half with a chainsaw or whatever the case may be, dude, that game was friggin' terrifying. And I just, maybe that's something that they use to get information out of people. Throw them into really horrifying, terrible situations and tell them it'll all be over if they just talk, or would they even need to do that?
Yeah, the torture, that would be great. They could do some amazing torture.
Yeah, great.
So you wouldn't want to see Jack at 4,000 frames per second, Skiva?
No, not even Jack. The lady in that game, the wife, oh my God, forget about it, man. No way. I couldn't handle it. Some of this stuff I could not handle if it got any more real. And some of the, Rush of Blood, forget it, man. If I ever saw that game in brain interfacing land, I don't think I can handle it. I think I'd want to stick to more happy and fun experiences.
Skiva, what about the point that I brought up, though, about the early days, really early days of taking over your visual cortex and putting some kind of movie inside somebody's head? What does that look like?
That's a really good question. That is such a good question, because when I was originally trying to think of what VR would be like before I ever tried VR, I couldn't picture it. Just like I can't picture how this is going to work. Will it be a complete and total sensory takeover, or will it be more augmented reality, if you will, where you're putting things into the real world, into your field of view? Will everything black out and you're transported somewhere else? Jeez, I just don't know. For the life of me, I can't even imagine being able, all of a sudden being transported somewhere and having all the feeling and the cold or the heat and the smells and the sensations and the touch. And it just breaks my brain.
You mentioned the cold, and Gaben actually talked about that in that interview, and he said that that trying to make somebody feel the sensation of being cold is actually incredibly difficult, because the sensation of feeling cold is controlled by a bunch of different things. It's not just one little thing. And so smells, though, here's an interesting thing. I was watching this one video where they were talking about brain-computer interfaces, and this lady was like, we can do smells. Like, we can make it so you can smell whatever like you want to smell cinnamon.
Wow.
Like you're in front of a Cinnabon in the mall, and you smell all that cinnamon, or you want to smell like whatever smell you want to smell, like they can deliver it on demand. I mean, maybe not perfectly quite yet, but the way she made it sound was like that's easy. That's easy stuff to do.
Yeah.
So imagine how that will affect. See the VR thing. Like when we start thinking about VR, and we start thinking about experiencing like a game combined with Neuralink. There's a lot of different aspects to it, because we could think about just having like a visual thing come in where it's like a giant screen, but out of the very edges you still see your real reality, but it's like this giant thing that is covering the vast majority, and only if you look in the extreme periphery do you see like actual real reality. But you're not in the experience, you're not touching the wood, you're not grabbing the gun, it's just visual, right? It's visual and audio.
Like a 360 video almost.
It's like a 360 video. It's visual and audio, and maybe you can control your avatar's legs or something, but within it. But you're not necessarily like feeling every little thing. But then they could pump in different smells at the right time and activate these smells. Now you said, Skiva, that you're willing to do this. So
yes,
when this is available, like how quickly are you willing to do this? Because like when it first comes on, it's going to come on for people with brain injuries, spinal cord things.
Yeah.
Actually, let me ask you this. When do you think a regular Joe Blow off the streets can have this operation done? And how much do you think that Joe Blow is going to have to pay to do it?
That's a really good question. Like Elon was saying, they are attempting to create this technology using mass-produced parts that are used by cell phone manufacturers in order to try to keep the price down, right? They also want to have this robot be able to do everything autonomously, everything from, you lay on the table, it cuts, cuts the skin, it cuts the skull out, it inserts all the electrodes, it puts everything back together, and you leave and you go home, right? I mean, so when we get autonomous and these parts are readily available, sure, the price will come down just like anything else. And I don't think I'm willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. What I want to do is I want a brain interface, but I want to control 100% of the firewall. I won't, if they're like, yeah, you can totally have this brain interface and we'll even pay for it, but we get to monitor you all the time and we get to see what you're thinking. I don't want to do that. I want a brain interface that gets put in, and then I'm the only one that has control over it. I control the security to it. Because seriously, I'm kind of like one of those Jekyll and Hyde weirdos. I want to experiment on myself. I want to go to my keyboard and be like, all right, my vision isn't that good. I don't need these anymore. Click, 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 click. All right, now I have supervision, and I'm gonna do this and transport myself. And so I want to be able to kind of hack myself in a weird way, and instead of relying on the companies that are going to be doing all of this stuff at first. So, I probably won't be a super early adopter of this technology. I would like it to be wireless.
Hey, honestly. I just had an idea. We no longer need Viagra. Like you just send a signal in your head and boing.
If they can make it so your legs work again, they can obviously make other things work again, right? Because they're telling your brain what to do. So in a lot of cases, your brain, something has failed or it's not firing correctly, right? So they're able to re-stimulate the parts and send signals that maybe your brain isn't capable of doing anymore. So I feel like they're going to be able to cure a lot of shit. A lot of shit.
So, Roots, when are you going to freeze yourself, brah? When are you going to freeze yourself?
It's a place in Scottsdale in Arizona. Come on over, buddy.
I was gonna run out and do it tomorrow, but no, I don't know that I would ever do that. I think that I know people were cutting their heads off in the 80s and 90s, right? And they were cryogenicing that. Didn't that what Disney did?
They still are, dude. There's a place in Scottsdale, and you pay for either just your head or your torso or your whole body. Yeah.
Seems like
you
paying
pay
for your
what
head is
you
a
wanna-
good idea because, hey, they're going to be able to work on it pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to be a head in a jar. It sounds like a horrible idea.
Okay, Roots,
But
wait a
yeah,
minute. Let me ask you this question, though. Let's say you live to 70 years old, right? So you're 70 years old, you're kind of an old man and you're not the same Roots anymore. And they're like, dude, Roots, everybody's doing it. Like all your friends they're already frozen. They're living in this incredible virtual world and they're in this virtual world. They're like 35 years old. Or they're 30 years old in the virtual world. They've got perfect bodies. They're perfectly in shape. They're having, the time of their lives, right? And you visit them every once in a while via VR. Like you come in as an old school person using VR to jump into their world, and they're like, Roots, look at me. I'm 70-year-old too, but my body's back in the cryo chamber and look at me, man. I'm having the time of my life. Every day I'm in Hawaii. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm on the top of the Mount Everest, I'm having the free, like, dude, you're not going to join them?
no. Well, Scion VR probably is one of those people, and he's stabbing me in the face in VR while I'm 70 and he's nice and young. But no, how do I, like, going back to the conversation we had a few episodes ago? How do I know it's not AI trying to trick me? Maybe it's not even my real friend.
Who cares?
Well, my thing is I would, and this is being 100% real. If Jesus is in there, I want nothing to do with it. I want to go to that reality.
So I have a question then for you, and so I feel like we're going to get some different perspectives with the three of us, and I'd really like to hear from some people in the chat with this one too, right? So with brain interface and being able to save state your head and being able to put it into another either carbon-based life form that maybe was either grown via cloning or whatever the case may be, or just some kind of a cyborg. That kind of introduces some immortality type of things here, right? Where we will be able to live hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years as long as we are able to transfer our conscious out before it's gone, right? So I guess my question here is that a curse on the human race? Will we be imprisoning ourselves here? Or is this a good thing where we will be able to then live forever and then overpopulate the planet and then maybe spread out throughout the universe? Do you think that people will trap themselves into this reality, and how will that affect us just in general if we could just transfer from our consciousness from one body to another to another to another, or even put it on a cloud somewhere and never die?
Well, here's one thing I thought about. So check this out. We were going to have an episode today that was going to be a grab bag episode where we're going to take a bunch of little small topics and talk about them. And then we decided, this Neuralink thing happened, so let's do this Neuralink thing. But one of the little tiny topics that I was thinking of doing was quantum immortality. And the interesting aspect of, it's really weird how this works out because, see, here's the thing. In quantum immortality, like for me to explain the whole thing, it would take too long. There's our thumbnail, by the way. It's a picture of the pig getting water right there, just like that on the thumbnail.
Oh, yeah.
But in quantum immortality, the idea is, let's say that you're driving along in your car and bam, a big rig slams into you and you're killed instantly. So everybody here that's in this reality right now, you're dead, okay? But in the idea of quantum immortality, you swerved and you barely missed that big rig, and now you're in this like alternate reality where you keep existing. And so a lot of people are like, well, that's an interesting idea, but you never die? Like, what happens when you're 110? How do you keep living when you're 110? Bingo, bango, baby. All you need to do is get to a future where this exists, and here's how you're living at 110, because before you ever got to 110, you froze your ass when you were 85 years old, and you're living forever in this freaking VR adventure world, running around crazy, doing all kinds of crazy shit, and your body's
Why would you need to freeze yourself?
Huh?
Because, like, unless you think, like, this is really you, and not what's inside you? Like, why would you need to freeze this body? What does this body even have to do with anything?
Okay, well,
point?
wait a minute, Steve. Let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get your consciousness out of this head into something else and still truly be yourself and not be a copy of your consciousness? So you were talking about growing these bodies. Like we could grow a body that is basically like an empty body, right? It doesn't really have a brain, or it has no memories or whatever. And then you transfer everything about you that is you into this empty body. But my question is, how do I know with absolute certainty that this isn't just a copy of myself? Like if I knew for...
You can't know that.
Okay, then how could you ever do it? Because you're committing suicide.
Not at this moment. But here's the thing. We're about to go through this whole thing where we're going to be putting all of these things into people. We're going to be learning all kinds of new things about the brain. We might find out that consciousness is controlled in this particular part of the brain, and this is what controls, this is what makes consciousness or unmakes consciousness. You know what I mean? Like everything goes in a different direction depending on what we learn during this initial process. So I think that's a hard question to answer, even though this whole episode is really just us speculating about the future. You know what I mean? None of this stuff is solid except for the things being done right now. But the learning part of this and learning about our brain, that's the ultimate thing. That's what we're going to get the most knowledge out of. And after that, I feel like we could then make a more accurate assumption to whether we were just creating a copy of ourselves and we just kind of thought we were ourselves, but maybe we're really not. Or are we actually transferring consciousness? Is that even possible? Is consciousness something wound into the energies of what we are, of the fabrics of our being? I don't even know if that's, that is such a hard question. It's such a hard question. But if we were able to do let's just pretend it's all super simple, and we're able to do a save state and load that shit back up into another person, and it is you. Because I guess that's all we can really assume right now.
Yeah, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it?
Body?
You're basically going to heaven.
Why wouldn't you upgrade?
You're like getting a trial to go to heaven, and yeah, you might go there. And so, for example, you go to this virtual world, right, where everything is amazing. You're 27 years old. You're in the best shape. Like any little feature of your body, you can improve it in any way that you want. If you've always wanted to be 6'3", you can, or whatever, right? And so you're living in this like dream world where everything is amazing. But I've always wondered, wouldn't you get bored after a while? Like, look, I definitely could spend several months there. I know that. I could spend several months there and I can have an effing blast. But eventually, every day is paradise. Every day is perfect. There's also...
They say that in The Matrix, right? And Agent Smith is like, we tried that, and you guys just rejected it. You couldn't have everything perfect. There had to be chaos and mayhem in order for you guys to be happy. So, that could very well be a thing. Of course, boredom could be a thing. But once you're... if you're talking about you're just putting yourself into a computer thing, everything is wonderful. Hopefully it's a lot better than Facebook Horizon, and we live there forever, sure, that would get boring. But if you were in there with everyone else's consciousness and you weren't separate anymore, and all the consciousness could see all the other consciousnesses, and all of the experiences were known by everyone, and you became this unified body, I feel like at that point it's very different than just going in there and being like, okay, well, now I just live in this computer world. I hope it doesn't get boring. It just depends on which direction this all goes in.
One other question I had real quick before I forget about it is to go back to this body idea, right? Where you're putting your consciousness or whatever into this new body, or a robot or an android or whatever, right? One of the things I've always thought, okay, so we have this brain in our head, right? And this brain in our head has our consciousness and our thoughts and all these different things, okay? Now, this brain, our heart is pumping blood up into our brain, which keeps our brain alive, okay? and the tissue in our brain is eventually going to get old, and it's eventually going to have problems, but what if they could just take your brain? Like, what if you could take a human brain and you put it into some type of android body, so it's actually your brain, like it's your real brain that you were born with and everything, but they put it into an android body. They have some type of artificial heart that is pumping the exact amount of blood, you know what I mean? And then maybe they're using little nanotechnology that goes in and it repairs part of your brain tissue or whatever to like keep your brain. Like, now, if you could do that, then I know it's me. I know it's me because that's my effing brain. That's the real brain that I had. And now you're just transferring my brain into like this robot avatar. Like, I'm good with that because I know that that's me. But anytime you try to back up some type of copy or whatever and you try to put it into something else, like, I feel like, how do I know that that's me?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a really, really good question. And it's so I was also watching on Facebook in preparation for this episode. Someone was talking about the idea of the possibility of taking your brain state, then either freezing your body or creating a new one, right, for space flight, right? So if you had to travel millions of light years away to get to another planet, if you could take everyone's consciousness, put it on some hardware, and then maybe grow some of these bodies on the way there. So when you get there, then you download that stuff back into that human brain, and now you've survived that multi-million light year journey. Do you know what I mean? That's another way people are. I think it was the lady that, what's her name? She explores for other habitable planets for NASA. So
hold on one second, because main fan
yes.
in chat has a good, an interesting question here. He says, main fan says, I don't understand the copy issue. And he says, I have no issue with a copy because I don't believe in souls. We're not even talking about souls here, dude. Like, a soul is a whole entire other ball game. The copy issue works like this. If you're my consciousness or whatever, you're saying we can back up your consciousness and we can put it on this like solid state drive. We will have a perfect, exact copy of your consciousness. We back it up onto this solid state drive. I will say, okay, that's great. Now you got but my consciousness is still here as well. So now I've got my consciousness here in my head operating right now. Now you have it on this backup drive, and you're saying, well, now that we've got it on your backup drive, we can go ahead and turn this thing off and eliminate this thing and put this thing. And I'm saying, wait a minute, I know you've got a copy of my consciousness, but if you turn this human body off or disintegrate it or whatever, maybe I'm truly dead, and now and I'm not talking about souls or anything. I'm saying now you just have this copy of my consciousness that isn't really me. It's just a duplicate. It's just a clone. It's like
Speaking
cloning
of duplicates, could you have many of you? What if you could? What if you could grow some extra bodies? You can have like 5 of you. You go to work. I sit here and
do the yard work. You go pick up my mail.
Exactly. So why couldn't that be a thing either? And at that point, if each one of you is creating its own memories, the hell happens there?
That was multiplicity with
dude.
And that was the problem. Is like the clones, they want to do their shit too. Maybe they don't want to go to work. Maybe they tell you, fuck you, you go to work. I want to hang out all day and play VR, And then, like Anthony said, how do you know you're not the clone? You're not the copy, and they're telling you to go do something. So it does kind of cause, pause as far as it just creates a huge cluster mess.
Yeah, it really does, man. It would be really interesting if I could just copy and paste myself. It would be super interesting. Dude, I can't even. This conversation just. I don't even know if I'm excited for the future, if I'm scared to death. It's just some bizarro stuff that the human race is going to have to deal with. My kids might have to deal with this. My grandkids will probably definitely have to deal with this, right? It's like, wow. I don't know, man. It's just
okay.
wild
Here's
shit,
a wild
really.
thing I got to say. What are the effing chances? What are the effing chances that you would be born in this era and you would be alive at the cusp of like nuclear war, freaking aliens, AI,
this is a whole other
brain
episode.
computer.
This is a whole
I
different
know. That's
episode,
what I'm
though.
saying here.
We could go for another 2 hours on just
well,
this.
that goes into this idea of last Tuesdayism or last Thursdayism, where they basically say all the past is a bunch of bullshit. It's all designed to put you right here at this particular time because this is where shit is happening. Like, why weren't you born in 1705 and you're just out in the woods chopping wood? But no, you're living right here with AI, brain-computer interface, virtual reality, singularity. Roots, any thoughts about
viruses?
No, it does seem like it's a very good possibility. I mean, that's the thing with it is like you wouldn't know. We could all be living in it and not even know it, right?
Yeah. You know, if you can write to the brain, then you could change history. You know what I mean? Like you could have been born yesterday and you could have the history written, you know, into your brain of whoever wanted you to think happened in the past happened. So it's,
right? Isn't that what happened to the Westworld robots, except for it be happening to humans?
Mm-hmm.
And one day you're this person, the next day you're somebody else. You never were that person.
Yeah. What if could you paste back in multiple memories into one person's head?
Well, you know, the memory thing, one good aspect of the memory thing is, like we were talking about removing memories. Like you remove that memory and then you aren't you anymore, you know, this thing that you suffered. But what about somebody that was brutally raped or something, you know, and they have this traumatic, or like when they were a little child, some horrible thing happened to them. And ever since then, it's like affected them their entire life because it's almost like they have this like mental block and they can't do certain things. If you could erase, if you could erase that very specific memory, but just that one, maybe they live a normal life and everything else.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah.
That's what a butterfly effect. That affects the course of your life. That affects your family's life and your kids' lives. I mean, you know, maybe your trauma and your rape or whatever stops that from happening to your child. And because you can't deal with it and you have it erased, now things happen to future generations. I don't know. I mean, it's just, you know, everything that happens, good or bad, is a very important lesson in life. And once you start erasing those things, it is not good. You know, I don't think. But I don't know. You know, if that happened to me, would I be like, well, I know that stuff, but I don't care. Just erase it anyway because it sucks. I don't know. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those things that's going to have to be discussed and figured out. You know, we're talking a lot now about the ethics in VR, you know, and what we should be able to do and what actions we should be able to record from people. And you know, but we're going to have to really think about this for brain interface. And we're going to have some serious conversations and come up with some very serious ethical standards. And then how do we uphold those ethical standards to different companies, you know, when they get to the size of a Facebook or whatever? Because, you know, obviously people are willing to very quickly give up their freedoms and their privacy for a cool, shiny new toy.
Yeah, you know, Gabe's son in that interview said this is coming a lot sooner than anybody has any realization of. This is coming way faster.
Said that too.
And what the other thing he was saying is governments are not tracking this. Like they have no idea what's going on here. There's no regulation that's in place. And he was saying there needs to be a consortium, kind of like Elon Musk says, you know, you have these groups that get together to think about nuclear proliferation. And he was saying, look, we need to have the same exact things for artificial intelligence. We also need the same exact things for brain-computer interfaces because, yes, these are coming. This is happening, ladies and gentlemen. Like this, if you live another 20 years, you're going to experience this. This is going to be a part of your life.
Not even 20 years, man. Yeah, they're going to start FDA studies on human beings soon. This isn't going to be just a mouse and a pig thing anymore. We're going to see real people with Neuralinks. And right now, it's, you know, it's pre-Atari phase. You know what I mean? But when that shit gets up to PS4 phase, man, life is going to be different. Everything's going to be different. This is possibly the evolution of humanity. It's possibly the birth of an entirely new species. I mean, this is not to be taken lightly. This is a really serious subject here, I think.
Absolutely. So. Well, we've been going for a long time, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to go ahead and call it an end to this episode. But you know what? I think the moral of the story here is just look what happened to me. Like, I was aware of brain-computer interfaces, but I wasn't tracking them in any kind. Like, I knew it was happening, I heard about it, and I knew it was coming along, but I just thought it was like, oh, you'll be able to like have words typed on a screen, big whoop-de-doo. I didn't know that this could possibly bring heaven and hell right into our experience so quickly. Like this is beyond artificial intelligence, quite honestly. Like this is like potentially transforming the human experience as we know it in every way, shape, and form. And this is not like 100 years away. This really isn't. Now, I believe it's a little farther away than you do, Skiva, because in 5 years, you might have somebody that was horribly injured in an auto accident, their spinal cord is severed, they might be walking around. But I believe it's going to be like 15 years before I can like go to my local Neuralink center.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I believe that too. Mostly because of cost, right? Because once the shit gets going, once that robot can do its job efficiently, dude, there's going to be no human error. There's going to be no, you're not going to need any people. You're going to be able to walk into a little medical facility, sit down and go home in an hour. No bleeding. This doesn't even cause any bleeding. That's insane.
Do you know your brain?
I don't know, man. I don't.
Your brain doesn't have any pain receptors in your actual brain. Now, in the lining of your skull, you do.
Lots of blood vessels and veins, though. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Once this machine can do everything, and these parts are being rapidly produced, it's gonna become a thing, and it's gonna happen fast. Just like when AI kicks off, when artificial general intelligence happens, it's gonna be like, oh, did you hear that AGI just, there's a big advancement. Oh my God, it took over the world. And just that.
Oh my God, there's Mandela effects everywhere because it already happened.
Right. So it's gonna happen sooner than you think. I think because you're thinking 15 years of like old school learning, but things are advancing so fast now, like daily. They're doubling.
I want to have a show about this because I don't believe shit is advancing as fast as everybody thinks it is. I think shit was always advancing. Like, I think if you go back to 1720, like if we went back to 1720 right now, like people will say, well, nothing really happened in 1720. Nothing happened until the steam engine. No, if you're living in 1720, there's shit happening every other day. Somebody came up with a brand new way to print a book, or there's a better wheel or something.
Sure, and not computer.
No, I know, but there was revolutionary shit that was happening always forever.
We didn't have AI though, Anthony. When we can have learning 10,000 years of learning in one night, like when that
I'll
hits,
believe it
when
when
that
I
actually
see it.
hits,
All right,
everything will change.
But yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think we are on a path here that we are all going to see this, and we're all going to see what we talked about either come into fruition or just be completely way off. And all this shit's coming down the pipeline as we speak. This shit is happening.
And so, ladies and gentlemen,
we will find out.
And ladies and gentlemen, all you have to do is tune in to Dark Frequencies every 2 weeks. We will be here live and direct to cover this revolution that is happening right before us. We're going to be covering artificial intelligence continually, brain-computer interfaces continually, simulation theory. We're going to get back into the UFOs. They're about to land any day now. So there's a lot of exciting stuff, man. So just stay tuned to Dark Frequencies. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you go ahead and like the episode and click the bell so you'll be notified about all our future episodes as they come online. And that's basically going to go ahead and wrap it up for this particular episode of Dark Frequencies. And we'll see everybody in about 2 weeks. Alrighty. See you guys.
Take it easy.
See you later. Bye, everyone.